Okay, today we're working on a 2003 Chevy Malibu, and we are replacing a wheel bearing that is making a ton of noise. So it was fine the other day until it was driven in a flooded road, and apparently water got in that bearing and it rusted a little bit, and now it's making a ton of noise. So we're going to take this off. First, take the wheel off, and once you get the brake caliper out of the way and get the rotor off, you're going to be looking at this. And there's a nut right in the center. Okay, so you need an impact wrench to get that off. And you need ideally you have a new nut. This particular one that I bought, which is a Duralast brand, which is, it's nothing special, that's standard stuff. I probably would have rather had the Timken, but not for double the price. So this is about 75, 80 bucks, something like that, 80 with tax, and 1-year warranty. And unless you abuse it or you happen to get a bad part, you shouldn't have any problem. That's going to last the life of the car. This has got 65,000 on it, and I have, I'm really surprised it went out now, but we'll get it done. So just so I can show you, hopefully you can see this. Might be a little bit out of focus, but this is the sensor. So pull this little tab up and away, and then slide down, and off it comes. Alright, so to get the caliper out of the way, you're unbolting this part of it. So there's one bolt. There's another one down here at the bottom my wrench is sitting on right now, which I'm using a 3/8 ratchet and a 13mm 6-point socket. And it goes on right like that. Get it on there. I've already pre-loosened this one just so you can see it. So then we're going up. Loosen, 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 loosen. Until that comes out, and then this whole piece will slide off. Okay, so I just took those bolts off. I didn't try and pry this off here yet. So you can see it's kind of tight. So what I'm going to do is put a screwdriver in here, a big one. And I'm going to work it back and forth this way until I pry it off. Alright, I need 2 hands to do this, so I can't videotape it while I'm doing it. But you can see I got a big screwdriver in there, and it's sitting against the pad here and against the rotor here. And I'm going to work it this way, just a little bit of time, wriggle it back and forth until it pops off. Don't hit this part, the shiny part. You'll mess up your rotor. So just a little bit, and it'll pop right off there. And when you take it off, rest it on something so this hose doesn't get kinked or broken or something. Okay, so I just got it off. I set it on the jack over there. It should be okay. And now this, the rotor, which is pretty hot right now because I was just driving the car when I took this off. Just take it off, set it there. Ouch! We're good. Now we're looking at that. That's the back side of it. This is the front side of it. So bolt, bolt, bolt. We're going to take those out. And I can't wait. It'll be done. So I think what we got to do is take this nut off. Once we have the nut off, I can knock the axle back through it because this will collapse. And that should let me get in here then to get the nuts out of it. So we'll see. Okay, so we're going to take that axle nut off. You need an impact wrench, pretty good one. And 35mm 6-point socket. It's a pretty hefty socket. This is a 1/2-inch impact wrench, 1/2-inch drive. Puts out 450 foot-pounds of torque. I don't know if we'll need all that or not, but probably a good part of it. And if that doesn't work, I'll be putting a 1/2-inch breaker bar in that socket with a long bar and just pry it until that thing comes off. So we'll see. Okay, nuts off. Came off pretty easily. On this car, this original nut you're supposed to throw out and use the replacement that comes with the kit, which I don't know where I set it down now, but trust me, I got one. And there's a new torque spec. Read the instructions. It says 180 foot-pounds, so you need a torque wrench to do that. So I'm going to lightly put it on with just a hand wrench and then use a torque wrench when I'm going back to put together. So right now I got to get this bolt, this bolt out. And you probably can't see it, at least not clearly. But right here is the head of one of them. There's another one down there. There's another one on the other side. So I'm going to use something like this socket if it fits. We'll have to get one that fits. I'll let you know what size it is. Alright, so I just took 2 of the bolts out. 13 millimeter head, hex head, and it sticks in right from the back like that, and it's actually threaded into this hole right here. I took the bottom one out too. To get them going, I used this. I didn't have a 6-point, so I used a 12-point, 13 millimeter, 3/8 drive. I had the breaker bar, so I used that instead of the ratchet. Just make sure that when you're in here with this, you have to get something that fits. This fit just perfect. I could still turn it and not hit this boot. If you tear that boot up, you're going to be really unhappy when you have to take that axle out. So just work slowly. Make sure you get a wrench that fits that bolt perfectly. And if the bolt head is tore up, it's rusted bad or something, then don't use a 12-point, use a 6-point, or you'll round that off, you'll never get it out of there. So I got one more to do on this side now. Alright, so all the bolts are out. I'm going to put my puller on it now. Alright, so the puller's mounted. I put all 3 arms on. It's hooked right behind the front edge of the bearing. And I tighten the screw down. It's sitting right in the center. So I'm going to tighten this clockwise, and it'll pull this off of the axle. So it's pushing back on the center of the axle while it's pulling the bearing forward. Hopefully it doesn't fall apart, because I've had them, when you do this, that half the bearing just yanked off because the bearing was in such bad shape. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. Okay, so it must be rusted on, because I used the puller and pushed this axle back. You can't see it right now, but the axle pushed back through the spline. So I'm going to take a big hammer and hit it right here, because we're throwing this thing out, and there's nothing holding it on. So I'm just going to whack it right here. Tap, 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 until that thing comes off there. It should pop right off. Well, that's what I was afraid would happen. The back part of the bearing stayed in there. There's all the rest of it. And I can see rust all inside of here. That's why the bearing was bad, because there's rust inside of it where there should be grease and no rust. So there's a seal and an outer casing. I'm going to take a hammer and a punch and knock that thing through. So this bore around here, that's what I'm going to avoid hitting the outside of it. And I'm going to crush this in, crush it in, crush it in, crush it in with the hammer and a punch. Tap, 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 until that thing folds in on itself. And then I'll be able to get it out. And the axle is just laying there now, so just don't hit the rubber part, you'll be good. Alright, so this is what I meant. I took a punch, and I'm tapping it in. There's a lip on there, a metal lip, all the way around here. That's the other part of that bearing that's sitting in there this way. So I'm going to fold it in on itself, and then I'll just pull it right out. Okay, so I crushed the thing out, and there it is. It's not supposed to go that way, but I figured I'd show it to you anyways when it doesn't go right. So that actually sat on it that way. And you can see it's all rusted up. It's got a hole where the water is supposed to be leaking out of it, and it's got white aluminum corrosion all over the place. So I'm going to clean all this out. That's why it came apart, because this is corroded, and then when the aluminum swells up and this rusts and swells up, they bind together. So I'll clean that off with a little bit of sandpaper. You need to make sure that this face is real clean. And I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on it before I put it back together, just to make sure. And I'll rub it right around in here and on this face where it might corrode. Okay, we're all clean. Inside of here is all smooth now. This face is all cleaned up. I used a flat file to go across this lightly, just to get the bumps off of it where it was corroded and raised up. And in the inside I happen to have a round file, so I just did that very carefully, work my way around. Don't gouge it, don't take off metal, you're just trying to knock the fuzzy white corrosion off. Now I'm going to take anti-seize lubricant. This is made by Permadex. And I'm just going to lightly go around the inside, lightly go across the face, and then we're going to start bolting it back together. Okay, so I slid the bearing up over top of the axle, and that goes right in the hole, all the way up, no problem. So, if that wasn't corroded, we're in Ohio, so we have salt on the roads in the winter. So If you were in a warm weather climate, that wouldn't have corroded at all, and this thing would have popped right off as soon as you took the bolts out. So we shouldn't have a problem this time because it puts anti-seize on it. So I'll start bolting it back together, and I'll be taking these bolts, 13mm head, putting them through from the back. They'll stick out of this hole, and they'll be threading into this, the one down here and the one over there. And just when you put this in, make sure that this wire goes through the hole first, or it's going to get pinched. Ooh, I just realized I forgot something. This wire mount goes behind there first, so I'll pop this back off and stick that in between there. Okay, so we're getting ready to put it back together. I undercoated that mount for that switch. Everything's just kind of laying there together right now. I'm going to be putting those bolts back in. These are the ones for the bearing, those are the ones for the caliper. And which should go good. I'm going to put Loctite on the bolts, because that's what I would think we should do. It's if you got the factory bolts, they would have Loctite already on the threads. So since I'm reusing the same bolts, which they're in good shape, they're not rusted or anything, so I'm just going to put this additional Loctite on those threads and reuse the same bolts. Okay, so it's all back together now as far as the bearing. Put the 3 bolts in, put my wiring connector back on, made sure that this nut was torqued properly. Now we're going to put the rotor on, and then slide the caliper over it and put those 2 bolts in.